Unit 4, Lesson 2 is on transforming trig functions. So we're only going to be transforming sine and cosine trig functions. We will not be using tangent. Today we're only focusing on vertical and horizontal stretches or shrinks. So whenever you have a coefficient that is multiplied in front of the sine or the cosine, that's going to be our A. That's what's stretching or shrinking something vertically, which means up or down. And this is called our amplitude. So like how far up, how far down your sine or cosine function are going. So just a quick reminder of what sine and cosine look like. The sine function, we know, starts at 0 and it goes up and then back down. And we know that the period is 2 pi, so it ends at 2 pi. That's what sine looks like. The cosine function, we know, starts at 1. So it starts at the top of the hill, goes all the way down and back up to the top of the hill. And again, this is also a period of 2 pi. One new thing we're going to be looking at today is what if it's a negative sine or cosine function. So really quickly, the only thing that changes if it's negative is that before, when I was going up, now we're going to go down. So with sine, we're still starting at 0, but we're just going to go down first before we go up. So the valley comes before the hill, but again, still 2 pi. And the same thing with cosine. If you have a negative cosine, now we're starting at the bottom, goes all the way up, and then back to where it started. Again, period of 2 pi. So this is really important just for knowing the shape of what your function looks like. Okay, so our amplitude is going to tell us how far up or down the hill and the valley go. The b value, this one that's multiplied in front of the x, that's going to tell you the period. So instead of going from 0 to 2 pi, we might be going from 0 to pi or 0 to 4 pi or whatever your period is going to be. The way we're going to find that is by taking 2 pi and dividing it by this number. So to find our new period, we're going to use 2 pi divided by whatever this number is. So let's look at some examples. For number 1, easy to see that your a is 3. And your b is 2. Okay, so let's first draw what shape this is going to look like. So we know that this is a sine function. It's a positive sine function, so it's going to look like this one right here. So we know it's going to start at 0, and it's going to go up and then down. What we need to figure out is first its amplitude. So amplitude is just the absolute value of a, so it is 3. Which is going to tell us that it's going to go all the way up to 3 and down to negative 3. And to find our period, we're going to take 2 pi and divide it by our b value, which is 2. So 2 pi divided by 2, the 2's cancel out. It just gives you a period of pi. So my new period is pi. So unlike before, where all of these ended at 2 pi, now we want this graph to end at pi. Which means that this middle part right here, this point I'm going to plot, should be at pi divided by 2, because that's right in the middle of 0 and pi. So now that I have this, I can use this to draw my graph. Because I know it starts at 0. I know it's going to end at pi. And I know the middle point is going to be at pi over 2. So right now here are my 3 x-intercepts. In between 0 and pi over 2, I want it to go all the way up to 3. So between 0 and pi over 2, here's right in the middle. I want to plot a point at 3, and that's going to be the hill. And then I want it to go all the way down to negative 3 in between these 2 points. Okay. And once I have this, I can just draw the rest of my graph by repeating this pattern over and over and over again. So from pi to 3 pi over 2, it's going to go up again, so make sure you alternate going up and then back down. And then same thing on this side. So because this is going up, we want this one to be going down. Again, halfway in between. And that is my graph for this function. So the domain of this is still the same because it keeps going on forever and ever in either direction, negative infinity to positive infinity. My range, however, is different because now the lowest y value is -3. My highest y value is +3. So my range is from -3 to 3. Okay, so let's look at number 2. So here's our A, here's our B. So we know that for this graph, this is a negative, see that negative sign, cosine. So the shape of this graph is going to look like, we know cosine starts at 1 or -1. Because it's a negative, we wanted to start at the bottom. So my graph is going to start down here. It's going to go up and then back down to the same place where it started. My amplitude in this case is 2. That's how far up and down I want it to go, which means down here is -2, up here is +2. That's my amplitude. My period, I'm going to take 2 pi and divide it by b. B in this case is 2 pi over, b in this case is 3, so my period is 2 pi over 3. Okay, so now I know I want this to end at 2 pi over 3. Which means that the middle point, so this point right here, if this is 2 pi over 3, halfway between 0 and 2 pi over 3, this middle point should be at pi over 3. And from our last lesson, we know that pi over 6 is 1 space, pi over 3 is 2 spaces. So let's use this to plot our graph. So we know we're starting at -2 on our y-axis. Pi over 3 we know is 2 spaces. So I'm going to move over 2 spaces, which is right here. And then I want that point to be at +2 up here. 2 pi over 3 means I'm moving another 2 spaces over. 1, 2. And this one I want to be down here at -2. Oops, too many spaces, sorry. It's this one right here, because this is 2 spaces over from this one. Which means that when I connect this, this is going to go up, and then back down. Here are my 2 middle spaces. That's what my cosine looks like, and it's going to just repeat itself over and over and over again. So here it goes up, back down, up, back down. Same thing on this side. That is my graph for number 2. Again, domain is -infinity to +infinity. Range this time is from -2 to +2. Okay. So let's take a look at number 3. So here's my A, here's my B. It's a positive sine function, which means it looks like this. My amplitude is 4, so that means my graph is going to go from -4 to +4. My B is 1/2, so I'm going to do 2 pi divided by 1/2. So in order to divide by a fraction, dividing by a fraction is the same thing as multiplying by its reciprocal. So we're going to turn dividing by 1/2 into multiplying by its reciprocal, which is 2/1, which actually gives us 4 pi, because 2 pi times 2 gives you 4 pi. So that means right here, the end of my period is 4 pi. And then right here, the middle of that is going to be 2 pi. So this is the graph I'm going to be drawing. So again, we're starting at 0, 0. I know that 2 pi is going to be the midpoint right here. And my entire graph actually isn't going to fit on this paper. So between 0 and 2 pi, I just want it to be just the hill. So halfway in between, which is at pi, I want it to go all the way up to 4. And so it's just one hill, because the valley isn't going to fit here, because this just goes from 0 to 2 pi. So on this side, if this is a hill, we know they alternate, so down here must be a valley. Here's another 2 pi, and that means that halfway in between we want it to go down to -4. So this is what my graph looks like. Domain negative infinity to infinity. Range goes from -4 to +4. Okay. Last example. So this is a negative cosine function. Let me draw this one down here. So because it's negative, I know it's starting at the bottom. It's cosine, so it's this one. It's going to go up and then back down. So my amplitude is 3. So I know it's going to go from -3 to +3. And my period is 2 pi divided by, my b here is pi over 4. So again, this is a fraction, which means I'm going to flip it and multiply. My pi's here actually cancel out, so your period is just 8. The period of this function is 8, which means that here, down here, you want this function to end at 8, which means that the middle point right here should be at 4. Okay, so let's plot this function. We want to start at -3, 0. At 4, we want it to go all the way up to 3. And then at 8, so this is 7, it's kind of off our graph. This is 8. We want 8 to go back down to the -3. So we're just going to connect our points. Halfway in between should hit the x-axis. So this is going up. And then halfway in between 4 and the 8 should hit the x-axis again. This one goes back down. And again, we're just going to repeat it on this side to finish our graph. So we're going to finish this valley. We're going to go, now it's going to go up to a hill. And that's my graph. So negative infinity to infinity is my domain still, keeps on going forever left to the right. And my range is -3 to +3.